I'm going to tell you a serious story about the savage Mediterranean island of Sardinia, a place so impenetrable and forbidding that the ancient Romans, who conquered everything they ever saw, simply gave up and walked away. Here's a picture of it. Here's another one. Yeah, it's just terrible to look at. I'm joking. It's hard to Google image your way to the actual impenetrable parts of Sardinia. Visitors to this Italian paradise seldom venture beyond the gorgeous coast. But inland, at the rugged mountainous center, it's another world, one largely frozen in amber because the modern world has been kept at bay, just like the Romans were. A few months ago, Savoir magazine sent me to find something, an edible something, that because of that isolation exists nowhere else on the planet. In all likelihood, it won't exist there anymore either. Welcome to the endangered species list of food, which is actually a real thing. This is su filindeo. It is officially the rarest pasta in the world. Doesn't exist outside of Italy, or even outside Sardinia, or even outside the thimble-sized Sardinian village of Lula. It is also among the most technically complex pastas in the world. Just 3 ingredients go into it: flour, water, salt. But it takes decades to master stretching these impossibly thin strands without breaking them. From there, you arrange several layers into a lattice, and then you let it dry in the sun. You crack pieces of it into boiling sheep's broth, and you crumble sheep cheese into it. Okay, anyone can crack pasta and crumble cheese, but the first part, the stretching part, here's a photo of all the people on the planet who can do that. So, my photographer and I were sent to find the pasta, but you don't just drive up to the local Olive Garden. Part of the reason the pasta is so rare is it's only served once a year to the 200 or so Sardinians who complete a grueling 20-mile religious pilgrimage in the middle of the night over rocky mountains and through dense, frigid valleys. Those who make it arrive at a little old whitewashed church on a steep promontory and are rewarded a bowl of the steaming pasta. I bought my first ever trekking shoes. Trekking shoes are exactly the same as regular shoes. So I wasn't the only one curious about su filindeo. That's celebrity chef Jamie Oliver trying unsuccessfully to make it. He didn't do the 20-mile hike, but he's cute, so okay. Barilla, the pasta-making company, also sent someone to learn the technique. No dice. The BBC sent a writer to write about it, so did USA Today. And there I was. On our way to the start of the pilgrimage, this photographer and I stopped at a small farm in the hills where this little old Sardinian man was excited to cook us a special pasta of his own, a totally different pasta. He was really excited. He sat us at a heavy wooden table next to a dying fire, and he kept scurrying out of his kitchen in this sort of strangely tiny baseball hat to give us progress reports on his pasta. Meanwhile, though, the photographer, Diana, was growing increasingly anxious about getting to Lula to set up her shots. So the old man would run out, say something about his technique, run back, and Diana would bury her head in her hands and just like miserable about how long this was taking. Finally, she turned to me with this terrible look. "I'm sorry," she said, "but we have to leave." I'm not going to describe for you the expression on the old man's face because you would actually die. Anyway, so we set out on the pilgrimage the next day, and it was just unspeakably hard, scrambling in the dark along rocky ledges, conducting interviews in the dark, losing track of the other pilgrims, losing our way, Diana shivering under this big pack. This actually has been a photo of what it looked like for most of the time. But the sun did come up, and like a little after dawn, we finally staggered into this church, and we ate the su filindeo, and it really was remarkable. It was like you could taste centuries of tradition in each bite. To be fair, I think cat food would have tasted just fine. but there it was. And I went home a couple days later. The other day I was at Whole Foods and I spotted the issue of Savoir with my story in it. And for some reason, seeing it called to mind not Su Filindeo, but that old farmer and his own personal pasta. And how it had found a kind of accidental refuge in the shadow of this weirdly famous disappearing food. If Su Filindeo is the charismatic megafauna of the endangered foods list, the white rhino, the mountain gorilla, this farmer's pasta is the lowly palm cricket. Jamie Oliver will never do an episode at this place. Barilla will never send representatives. Savoir will never send a writer. And one day, this man in his tiny baseball cap will be gone, and then that's it. Maybe a couple locals will remember that pasta, recall eating it at that heavy wooden table by that dying fire. Some granddaughter will try to make it one day at a family reunion, or her cousin will say it wasn't springy enough. They'll argue about it, and then they'll change the subject to whatever podcast they're both listening to. And then a thing that existed for a minute in this universe will not exist again. The same goes for all of us. I'd like to believe this is the beauty of life, that existence is not a museum, and that death and extinction and ephemerality all fan meaning into our brief time here. But I don't believe that. I believe it's a huge fucking design flaw. People going away, pasta going away, rhinos and gorillas and palm crickets going away. I think it's totally dumb. If you feel that life is a miracle and Exhibit A is this crazy pasta in this crazy village on a crazy island, then you have to be furious that any square inch of it ever disappears. I don't have a solution, but I do have flour, water, and salt, and so do you. So go home and just start making weird pastas. That's my prescription. Make them long and skinny or short and fat, whatever. As long as they're endangered species, I figure we might as well start inventing new ones. Call it a refuge from time itself. And then, to be funny, make people walk 20 miles for it. Thank you.